Good evening and welcome to the third and final Prout Chapel BFA reading of the fall of 2020. Tonight we have two readers, both of whom are midway through their thesis work, and both of whom are writers who delve into the crucial, painful, and mysterious theme of depression. They use their creative impulses to not only find solace in the ability to give voice to depression, but joy in the act of sharing those articulations. Reid Olsen will begin with poems, followed by a story, then poems. His consciousness, in his own words, is, quote, obsessed with perpetuating its own momentum, unquote. This momentum, like all things powerful, can swerve dangerously, or it can focus itself on advancing carefully and confidently, as we witness it doing here in this finely crafted, swiftly moving selection of work from his thesis in progress. Our second reader, West Cannistraro, writes poems that read like a collage of dreams, with evocative titles like The Moving of Girl Scout Cookies and Fear of Alcohol. His is a consciousness that has the courage to make art of the bad whispers by lining them up with the beautiful and productive and good ones. Please welcome tonight's duo.
Hello, everybody. My name is Reid Olsen, and I would first like to start this off by thanking you all so much for coming, or rather, watching my BFA reading. So, some other thank yous I would like to issue here are huge thank yous to all the professors I've ever had during my time here at BGSU, especially the English ones. You all are amazing. You really caused me to become a better writer, but not only that, but a better person. Your classes taught me new things. They challenged me in ways I've never been challenged before. I never left any of your classes without learning something new or changing in at least one small way. So for that, I thank you all so much. So the other people I would like to thank you are my amazing peers in the creative writing department. You are some of the best people I have ever had the fortune of meeting. You never failed to have kind words to say or really insightful and helpful comments during workshops, which some of them even helped to craft the very pieces I'm about to read tonight. So I really do thank you all, and I wish you the best of luck in whatever you're going to do in the future. So I'm going to be reading some pieces, specifically some poems and a short fiction piece from my thesis, Into the Mind. We are going to start off with my piece entitled Depression. Depression is something I've struggled with for a couple years, and I issued myself a challenge with this piece to kind of see if I couldn't represent how it felt for me personally, but in a imagery-based way. This is depression. The house sits at the end of a long and cracked street. All alone there at the end of everything. An empty and lonely place of sadness. Masses of muddied green vines wrap the house up in a destructive embrace. Neither can be separated. Too far gone for any sort of help. Within the main room of the home, an old cabinet sits along the wall. One door leaning on one hinge, while the other lays on the ground. Treasured memories now gone from within, taken when they were needed most. A beautiful wooden table, laying tilted on the ground, one leg broken off, not entirely broken, but left to rot all the same. An old fireplace, once the center of the home, providing warmth and light to all, now broken into chunks, allowing the cold air to blow inside, invading the home and stealing all warmth. The once polished floorboards ripped up from their spots to display the dirt beneath, which spread where it could, in order to add to the filth in the house. It pervaded everywhere. A part of me wants to stay, to finally fix all of the ruin that spread here, to make this dark place full of light once more. One other part says, there is no point. The damage has spread too far, and any attempts would be failures. Just as always, the other part wins out, and the house is left alone once more. So, this next piece is entitled The Zombie. It deals with repetitive thoughts, the memories, and just random thoughts that won't go away no matter how hard you try to get them out of your mind. So this is The Zombie. I remember you. No matter how hard I try not to, I still remember you. You are a disgusting and decayed and shambling thing, there to remind me of all of my mistakes. You moan and groan at me as you stumble ever closer, back to where I can't ignore you. I don't want you here. I simply want you to leave. But nothing ever works. No matter how hard I shove you back under, you always manage to pull yourself out of your grave. Why won't you just stay there? God damn it. Why won't you just go away? So this next piece is entitled The Museum of the Mind. It deals with a lot of the similar topics as the last two pieces, but this time sort of based around a decayed and just destroyed museum. So, the floor is absolutely covered in filth. Inky black vines covered in thorns wrap around the hall in a stranglehold. Not an inch of it is clear. Dust and vines as far as the eye can see. The formerly rapturous halls, once filled with the sounds of happiness, filled with laughter and joyous music. Now deadly silent, as if even one happy word could cause a war. Further into the halls lay exhibits in ruin, remnants of a fall from happier times. Glass displays smashed, their shards left on the ground, glinting in the dim light, like a million sparkling gems. The contents smashed on the ground, shards of wood and plastic from treasured childhood toys, sprayed here and there across the floor like the remains of a grisly murder. Giant statues of gray stone, dedicated to friends and family, sculpted with the utmost care, brought down with a hammer and smashed into hunks of glittering stone. Marble pillars etched with images of times with friends, which used to be the happiest of memories, toppled to the ground and shattered, the remnants of that beautiful, gilded, marvelous marble, covered in the sharp embrace of the onyx vines. The only parts that remain, the ones left alone by the ruin, are the dark parts of the museum, the parts which I wish would have been destroyed. Dark idols of past mistakes, placed as if it was foundational. The sounds of misspoken words repeating over and over, the only things untouched. There's nothing that I loved here anymore. It's all been taken away by the dark, this once happy place, relegated to the dust. So this next piece is entitled Wrecked Memories. It is a short fiction piece which deals with a lot of the same topics as The Zombie, actually. So, the silky black tie felt more like a noose around Jason's neck as he stood there straight as possible. He tugged lightly at the black suit, which hadn't been worn in well over 5 years. His eyes wandered up, gray slabs and beautiful monoliths as far as the eye could see. He cast his eyes back to where he really didn't want to watch, but watched anyways as shovelfuls of dirt were tossed one by one into the pit in the grass. which the coffin had been lowered into just moments before. As the grave began to be completely filled up, people began to disperse. Most of them would probably be at the reception in just a short amount of time. Jason didn't think he could handle going to that, not with all the memories tied to that place. He watched as Frank's mom and dad took one last long look at the grave before saying their final goodbyes. He stood back and watched as they started to walk away, the grass squishing beneath their feet as they walked towards the parking lot in order to head for the reception held at their house. Jason walked forward toward the grave, as timid as a wild animal. He had been stunned to get the invite to the funeral in the mail 2 months ago. After all, he hadn't been back to this town in over a decade, let alone talk to anyone here. I mean, how they even had a current email address was beyond him. Even his own parents didn't care enough to ask him for any of that. It was truly weird standing over the grave of a former friend whom you hadn't seen in 20 years. Suddenly, a flash of memory came forward into his mind. A memory of one of the last times he and Frank had shared at Frank's house. No, he muttered as he frantically shook his head. Not here, not now, not ever. After a short time, the memory went away again. He sighed as he kneeled before the tombstone and placed a trembling hand on top of the cool gray stone. It was hard to accept somewhat that Frank was dead from cancer, but there was the proof right in front of him. Jason, a voice called out. Jason jumped in surprise, sure that everyone had left. He turned around and saw Frank's elderly father, Tim, standing there with a box in his hand. Not much had changed about him since the last time he had seen him, right before he had left town for good. He still had the same spiky salt and pepper hair, the same stubble. It was like nothing had changed, if only that was true. Jason shifted his feet as he locked eyes with Tim. Frank left you something. He said he wanted you to have this right before he went away, he said as he presented the box to Jason. Jason took it slowly, carefully, almost as if he was afraid that the lightest touch would turn it into dust. If you feel up to it, come by the reception, if even for a little bit. I really can't. There's too much tied to the house. I'm not sure I could handle that, Jason said as he averted his eyes from Frank. I understand. Just wanted you to know that you're welcome anytime, alright? We've missed you, Tim said before patting Jason on the shoulder and finally walking towards his waiting wife. Jason looked down at the plain brown cardboard box now resting in his grip. The box was completely unassuming. No markings on it whatsoever. It was heavier than he expected, but still fairly light. Probably only around 3 pounds in its entirety. There was no way to tell what was inside of the box without opening it. After a while, just standing there and looking down on it, the cool wind brushing past, he started to walk towards where he left his car. The old and beat-up sedan sat just where it had been left. The once bright red car was pot-marked with rust and scratches. It was a pretty bad car, but it had been ridiculously cheap, and he needed a car to get around. He hardly trusted himself to drive any car after what happened with the car loaned to him by... Nope. He refused to keep going with that train of thought. He unlocked the doors and carefully set the box in the back seat of the car before getting into the driver's seat and starting the engine. Before he was able to put it in reverse and start backing out, he caught a glimpse of the box in the back seat through the rear view mirror. Hate you. He shook his head once again as he desperately tried to rid himself of the memory. It took even longer than it did last time. Coming here was a mistake. There was no way he would be able to handle going to that reception. He turned on some loud rock music in order to drown out the thoughts, as the loud guitars and singing permeated through the car, rattling his brain till no thoughts were left. He put the car in reverse and sped out of his spot and began to make his way back towards his hotel. Hours later, a pale strip of light shining through the gap between the curtains and the window, casting parts of the hotel room into a soft light. On top of a chair, near the dark brown desk, was the box, with the light perfectly illuminating it. Jason laid on the bed, the scratchy white sheets twisted around him. Every sight of the box replayed the same memory over and over. You're the worst. I hate you. The memory continued to repeat, like something in his head just hitting a rewind button forever. Jason curled up further into the bed and shut his eyes as much as he could. So much that he was seeing spots in the dark of his eyelids. No matter what, the box, and the man who wanted him to have it, plagued his every waking thought, depriving him of the sleep he desperately wanted. I just want to forget. I just want to forget, he said, repeating the mantra more and more, desperately trying to drive the memory away. The memory continued to keep him up for another hour. Finally, his brain seemed to feel his torment was enough for the day. So it allowed him to drift away into a bitter sleep. Birds outside were beginning to chirp out their melodic sounds, filling the air with their beautiful music. On the bed, a majority of the covers had been torn off, either knocked on the ground or wrapped around Jason, creating a living mummy of blankets. As the melodic sounds of the birds outside began to reach him, Jason began to regain consciousness and return to the waking world. He began to, with some difficulty, wriggle his way out of the blanket cocoon. As he sat up and began looking around, his eyes immediately locked onto the brown box once more. He jerked his head away from it, desperately seeking to ignore it. But the box seemed to call to him, a strange siren call, calling him to pay attention to it, to not ignore what he wished to distract himself from. The ancient bed springs groaned in protest as he sat on the side of the bed before getting up and approaching the box. With shaking hands, he grabbed the miniature scissors attached to his keyring on the hotel room desk and began to slice open the tape on the top of the box. After the tape was thoroughly sliced, he began to carefully open the flaps of the box until it was completely open. Before taking the final peek into his Pandora's box, he paused and rethought this. He really didn't need to do this. He could just pitch the box, leave the memories behind for good, and never come back. With these thoughts, he shook his head. He didn't know why he came back here at first, but now he knew the reason. Closure. He wanted closure. He wanted to gain closure from the mistakes he had made, the terrible words traded back and forth between friends. A friend telling a friend that they hated them and meaning every word of it at that moment. All over a crashed car. His eyes slid shut and sucked in a deep breath and held it for 5 seconds. And then slowly released it. Making the decision, he then peeked over the precipice of the brown paper material and looked into the depths of the box. Printer paper. There was just standard size white printer paper in the box, around 200 pages, and that was it. Jason's eyes narrowed in confusion as he picked up the papers. Stuck to the first page was a small note from Frank. In my final days, I regretted everything that happened in those last few moments. The words I said that day have never left my mind, and I regret every syllable of them. I am truly sorry. We never got to finish this due to everything. I hope that after all these years, you are able to lay it to rest. With that, Jason began to look at the papers. Upon looking at the first page, memories came flooding back to him of long nights, with Frank at his desk and Jason in a nearby beanbag chair, writing this very stack of papers. This was the script for the film they'd been working on for an entire year, until the fight had happened. It had been Frank's idea. He had always been the more adventurous one. They had been so hopeful with the script. They had thought that they had a great story and it would connect with people all around the world. He carefully leafed through each of the pages. Honestly, it was better than he expected from his younger self. With a little reworking and lots of additions at the end, this could be workable. The script start a group of friends who decide to make their own theme park one day. The script starts with the friends first coming up with the idea for it and making the plans to actually go for it. The first act featured them as kids, sketching out layouts, rides, and beautiful buildings for the park. The second act had them as college-bound teens, taking the courses they would need in order to make their dream a reality, while they tried anything they could to gain enough money to fund everything. The third act was supposed to have them as adults, finally constructing the park and welcoming the first people, but it was never written in. Realism was pretty much thrown out of the window with the story, but it was an upbeat story, and sometimes that was just what was needed. There was more after the stuff he knew that he'd written with Frank. An ending of sorts where the relationship between the friends deteriorated. Ultimately, a fight broke out, and they all went their separate ways. The main character staying behind while the others left for other cities, vowing to never talk to one another again. Jason grimaced and shut the manuscript, but before he could put it back, he noticed ink on the back of the last page. Flipping it over, he was met with the nostalgic sight of Frank's chicken scratch. He'd been plotting out the real ending to the story, an ending where the friends reunite years later and bring the dream back to life. One word was written as big as possible at the top: reconciliation. I can't believe you wrecked my car. It's the only thing Granddad left me. I hate you, Jason. I never want to hear from you again. Jason placed the manuscript on top of the desk and looked at it for a few moments. He looked down at them, and there was one glaring mistake. One omission that would need to be fixed right away. Jason picked up a nearby pen and began to write something across the front of the first page. After he finished writing, he set the pen down next to the pages and walked away with a smile to begin packing for the long journey home. Dedicated to Frank, you're the best friend I could have hoped for. I'll never forget you. So this next piece is entitled Old Friends. It is somewhat based on depression for me. The way my depression kind of works is that it comes and goes in a lot of ways. It'll be gone for, I don't know, a week or so before popping back in randomly one day, and then I manage to force it out again. Hello, old friend. You're here once again. I thought I rid myself of you, but you stuck around, hidden deep within, waiting for another push so you could come slither within once again. But I must ask you to leave once more, to get out of my life and never return. I will grasp at you and rip you from your spot you have dug yourself into and finally cast you out. You will return, of that I am certain, but each time I will muster the strength to kick you out, never allowing you to have the hold you once had. So this next piece is entitled Insomnia. It it sort of represents a lot of what goes on for me. My brain just sometimes just keeps me up. Toss, turn, and tremble. Nothing coming to me, not a wink, not a nudge. The fabric bunches around, scratching at me and clinging to my legs. The clock blinks 12 a.m. at me as thoughts over grades endlessly cycle through my brain. Deep down, I know my grades are fine, but the mind won't stop spinning a yarn over every disaster that could come to be. I attempt to force the thoughts away, to quiet the raging torrent of my mind, and finally steal some rest for myself. So this is the last piece of my thesis. This is the Museum of the Mind Redux. As obvious, it is a sequel of sorts to Museum of the Mind. I wanted to end this thesis off on more of a hopeful note, because I'm trying to do better with all this mental health stuff, and I really want to represent that through the same images and the same location as that earlier piece, just representing it being fixed and everything becoming better for once. So, the floor remains covered, but not for much longer. The filth will be removed, and vines cut away, and if they refuse to be cut, they will be burned away, until they are nothing but ashen remains. Everything cleared, not an inch of the ruin left. The formerly silent halls, now alive with sounds, silent for no longer. The joyous sounds of friends, of happy times. Further into the halls, repairs are being made, remnants of the fall being reworked into something much better. Glass displays made shiny, their panes damaged, but together, glimmering in the bright light like a serene ocean. The contents, proudly displayed once more, the pieces of childhood, their wood and plastic repaired, and the cracks healed. But still there with the scars of the past. Marble pillars etched with images of new times, with new friends, once again housing the happy memories, lifted up high, the cracks there like a battle wound. The damaged, but still proud marble, covered in the remnant of the damage. The dark parts that remain, the ones that who caused the ruin, are remembered, but are overtaken by the happier ones. The dark idols are kept to remember the mistakes and learn from them, but they are no longer worshipped. The sounds are finally turned off. There is everything here. It has all been returned. The journey was hard, but this once dour place, the museum of my mind, is mine once more. So that is the end of my BFA reading. And I would once again like to thank you all so much for listening to that. And I wish you all a happy holidays and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Hello, I am here to do my reading. A lot of my poems are based off memories or experiences I've had. That's where I get most of my inspiration from. So you'll see a lot of that in my reading. That being said, let's just dive in and hope I don't make a bunch of stammering mistakes. Alright, first one is based off a memory of one of my first real experiences with a tornado. So this is what inspired it. The tornado. You hear its massive pounding in your ears, and perhaps you can smell its sweet air. You sometimes witness its unique power, a raw power unable to be quantified or described or fully understood. You hear its beating heart as it slams against your home, tearing shrapnel off your roof and off the sides of your house. It is like a beating drum of wind outside your protective walls, preparing to destroy every little thing above and around your head. Every piece of multicolored furniture, of the hardwood frames inside the drywall, of steel and bronze nails and screws, it prepares to destroy it all to dust. Alright, so this next poem is inspired by a note I had to write to my father to try to explain to him what it means to be transgender, which I'm a trans man, so I hope that makes a little bit more sense. And we have gotten better at this understanding, but this is inspired by the note I had to write and the feelings behind that. So, with that being said, let's dive into it. Listen, Dad. You get mad when I can't answer your questions. My face turns red myself when I can't seem to make you understand what I know myself. Even my eyes feel hot with burning wood behind them, and I can smell the smoke building up inside me. You say that being transgender does not make sense, that your mind's door is closed and locked, is voiced against accepting something that you can't make any sense of, and refuses to try to find a way to comprehend. You are my father, we share the same brown eyes and hair, we collide our storms when times get too harsh, and yet you don't even try. I try to explain it is based on something you can't see, but it is something you know. Like how someone may believe in God because they say they know he exists despite never seeing him their entire lives. But you blink your eyes and say you can't understand or accept it. Didn't you believe in God at one point? If God exists, He made me this way. I'm not sure how to explain it to you anymore. Not in a way you can easily comprehend, especially if you don't want to try. You can't seem to understand. I can't explain it easily, and I can't explain a feeling of the soul. It is a feeling that I know because my inner tiger tells me this is who I am. These are my stripes that lie inside my body, but it is not what my physical body tries to define me as. My soul speaks the opposite of who I am. No matter what I try or how I phrase it, you can't comprehend that. I don't expect you to. Your mind's door is shut and locked tight, a million things blocking it from behind, preventing it from opening. Chairs, tables, toys, cars, anything that can defend your remembrance of who you once saw me as if realizing who I am changes those memories completely and makes them a blurred painting that you can't tell foot from face. I only hope that one day you will take the key to your mind's crusty door that has been locked for many years and unlock it, so that you may be able to understand me even a bit and see my inner stripes on the outside of me too. This next poem is based off a memory of mine that still has some minimal scarring in the back of my head, but me and my family have all gone over this. It's the reason I'm able to write about it and well, share it. So with that all said, let's go ahead and listen to this poem, or me read it. Fear of alcohol. I watched as she would go to her friends, the sun barely even getting ready to descend. They would pour her large glasses of bitter red liquid, the shouts coming from all emotions, happiness to sadness to fury all at once, the arms to my sweat-covered throat, threatening to crush into it if it were not for the cushions of the chocolate-brown couch. And when my father enters the fray, her anger shifts to calls of love and traps me in the arms of a woman reeking of alcohol. He sees nothing but a drunk mother holding her child to her chest, not even recognizing my tear-stained face and eyes. He does nothing to help, eyes just flat and mouth frowning. I sit in fear when she tips that glass of red wine and swallows the addictive poisonous nectar whole. This next poem is a little bit on the lighter side. It is based off a event that I would do every year with one of my organizations, where we would go out and help another group load a bunch of Girl Scout cookies to all the Girl Scout leaders and their assistants, like the cookie moms, into the truck so their troops, Girl Scouts, could hand out the cookies that they sold. So that's where this poem's inspiration comes from. The moving of Girl Scout cookies. Cold, bitter wind hitting you endlessly. You're just praying for a moment of unshakable warm relief. Occasional flakes of soft ice melting upon the tip of your nose as it lands for a moment. Your nose a bright red like you remember Rudolph's from your childhood. The bitter cold wind takes your breath from your chest before you can even take in the air. Hungry. You've been out all day, no food, until another 3 hours pass. You file cardboard boxes of Girl Scout cookies into frozen aluminum trucks or trailers. The cookies look so appetizing, your mouth waters fast at the thought of the sweet treats in the well-glued boxes, of varying tastes and textures, of unending combinations of ingredients, of the shortbread and peanut butter, of the coconut and caramel chocolate, of the mint-infused chocolate, of the tangy lemon added within the crumbly mess. No matter your personal taste, it all sounds like it would be heaven upon its arrival in your grumbling, empty stomach. Exhausted. Heavy boxes that made your muscles ache and burn, your warm breath as you put boxes away, fast and ragged, creating the largest puffs of steam, With every hard and painful exhale, your vision blurs once in a while, your eyelids droop every so often, but you repeatedly snap your eyes and mind awake, once again searching for the next box to fill a trailer. This next poem is based off something that I think a lot of retail workers can relate to. A particular saying that's in the title, as always, that we a lot of retail workers will hate and can say that we will lament about it whenever we can. And so I lament about it in this poem. So that being said, here we go. The customer is always right. Is the customer always right to put allergy medication behind the toys in a place where employees might not have ever noticed them, leaving them to collect dust and debris until they couldn't sell or be salvaged, in a place that if the store ran out of similar products and someone needed them, they may never find them? Is the customer right when they drink 2 bottles of iced coffee and hide one behind the shoes and one behind packs of Gerber baby food? They may have not stolen the iced coffee, but they drank it without pain and got away with it. Or perhaps when they spill a bunch of detergent on the ground and do not tell an employee, leaving the spill left for someone to slip on to cause serious damage to a random person, when a person doing nothing puts another life in danger. Many people say the customer is always right, but an employee of retail will say not. When an employee has to call for help because someone's allergic reaction got out of hand, when a manager has to call for an ambulance because a customer slipped on a spilled bottle of soap and their leg is twisted in the wrong direction, these are the times when an employee will say the customer is not always right. These next 2 poems are based off of mental disorders that I have, and my take on my version of it, because mental disorders are all different, how they affect different people. So this is just how my mental disorders affect myself. So here we go. Manic bipolar disorder. You are but a dim light one moment, then a mere moment later, bright like the sun. You wave around carelessly like a high-crested wave in the ocean, crashing back and forth repeatedly. You wave around trying to welcome yourself, then die down to disappointment. I watch you burn and dance around, reminding me of what goes on within humans. Watch your engulfing light grow quiet and tired, your wild movement fall to disappear as your unreasonable bringings become nothing. Like the ocean smoothed in a calm bed after the waterspout's dangerous storm, and it seems the time to end will never end. Okay, so this next poem is a 2-parter. Each one is its own small little sonnet, but that being said, there is a chance, especially the second one, that could have some trigger issues, so just be prepared for that. This is just my expression of my version of depression, so get ready to see a lot of that. So yeah, you have been warned. War Against the Beast, Part 1. You fight me with all your soldiers, the grassy battlefield in my mind and heart is now stained with the black of depression. I fight you back with all my might and energy, my clear blood of tears joining the stained grass. No one cares about you, no one would ever want to be there for you. As true as that may be, I cannot believe that no one cares for me or that I am alone. There are others who share this pain. I know they are out there, in a far-off world or maybe somewhere nearby, but still so distant. Part 2. You cannot tell me that I do not belong, as there is hope in others. There are people who I belong with, who love me and care for me. I argue with you every day of my life. You need to listen to my words that clasp your oppressing swords. which are words that clash with my hope for happiness, the glimmering promise for swords, your words, your poison ruins. You should not exist. Your life is nothing more than dying. The world doesn't need you. Do us a favor and vanish. And that's that poem. This next poem has absolutely nothing to do with mental disorders. And it has nothing really serious about it. It is a Erasure poem that I've messed around with for a while, taking inspiration from a scenario and a D&D sort of version of a board game that my friend's mom created a while ago, and we were all playing it, and this is based off a situation that occurred in that very interesting mission that we had to do. Dear God, we almost killed. We were just all of us gaining wounds like flies losing wings. Then Kokichi, his screams, his blood being held by tentacles. Then our brains trying to think. Then our guns taking shots. Then his body pierced like moths chewing through cloth. Kokichi, we're sorry. Going back to more memories poems, this is based off a earthquake that happened near my hometown, which was very unexpected because I'm from Michigan. No one saw it coming. That's where this inspiration came from. It happened back in like 2015, I believe. Michigan's earthquake. Without a warning, you rocked our house, made the lights flicker. You rocked the entire state. Your presence was unknown. You created a storm of questions scientists may never answer. Yet despite the lack of warning, despite the chaos you have brought, you bring excitement to those unexpecting, a new chapter in Michigan's geologic tale, now written in a book, changing the original story of the state in a single heartbeat. For you came without very much warning, and yet the movement of the earth has created a new tale to a new past. Going back to some lighthearted work, this next one is also based off a mission in a way from one of the board games I did that I was playing, and it was very interesting. And basically I took all the comments that we had from out of context and basically plopped them into this poem with no real strategy to it. So that's this poem. This is a bunch of quotes put into a poem format. So we'll see how this goes. Comment in a Portals game. Mom, I thought you didn't want to play your game. I'm busy, but it's my game. Valid. You have a chest that looks like a galaxy and a guard who's being choked by a dragon. How much do you have to not be paying attention to not see the dragon? Mom, do you have to mom right now? You're a 3-inch tall pixie. I don't want to verbally intimidate her. I just want her to know I could strangle her with vines if I wanted to. Make the plants around her twitch to be like, tell the truth, you little shit. I think the milk is in somewhere. No tests. Just hot. This next poem is going back to focusing solely on memories, as it's focusing on some memories that I have with my grandfather. He was a huge, influential person in my life, so I decided to write a poem about him to, kind of touch on to that really important aspect of my life, so we're going with that. From a lifetime ago, another lifetime, looking back, your brown chair sat in one corner. You had a wooden dispenser sat by your chair and guarded it until we did something good. Deserved your M&Ms, you protected and told us they were happy pills. You would grab them for us, giving me your special treats on your lap until my eyes closed, holding the candy. The chair in that corner, back when your oldest grandchild sat in your lap in that chair and she called you our replacement for Grandpa. Your daughter moved in, took your chair, put it in the garage. I knew she held your memory close, but now those memories feel so long ago. In that chair that you used to sit at, where you'd play games with me and make my childhood a bit better. This is the last poem for the night, It's another one which really holds strongly to my heart because it was when me and my first crush and love interest confessed to each other. It was definitely an interesting scenario, so I decided to write a poem about it to kind of have in my memory for the rest of the time and kind of memorialize it. So with that being said, let's get right into it. I've probably made a transition like that 5 times. During a snowy night, it broke the dark with light after a quiet year. Small flakes of water fell from the sky like white confetti. It was the night you and I wore our heavy gray and black winter coats. You grabbed my pale hand, looking at me with your gentle dark eyes. It was the night you whispered in my ear what you felt in your heart. I told you that I responded to your feelings and that I felt the same. We held each other in our arms, smiles stretched across our relieved faces, the night we were one. I remember the fear, though, as the sky broke into a million white embers after a year of silencing our feelings. That is my poems for the night. Thank you for listening, and I hope y'all have a good night.